Imagine this. You work day and night, you break your back doing double shifts, and every single time you get your paycheck, instead of spending it on fun or comfort, you save it. You save it because you have a dream, a plan, a future that depends on that money. Now picture this. One day, after months of sacrifice, you return home only to discover that the very people you trusted most, your own family, have taken all of it. Not stolen by strangers, not robbed on the street, but handed away by your own parents to your spoiled sister, just so she could live her fantasy life of shopping, clothes, and parties. And when you ask why, they laugh in your face, telling you, "Don't worry, you'll earn again." That's what happened to me. And the truth is, the money they wasted wasn't just ordinary savings. It was something much, much bigger, something that would soon turn their laughter into silence. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Nathan Carter, and I grew up in a small town in Ohio. Life was never easy for me, but I learned early that if I wanted something, I had to work for it myself. My parents were not cruel, but they had always treated me differently compared to my younger sister, Sierra. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one who got attention, gifts, and praise. And me. I was the quiet worker, the one they relied on when they needed something done, the one who never complained because I thought hard work was my way out. When I turned 18, I started working double shifts at a warehouse. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't easy, but it paid. Every night when my back ached, I would remind myself that each dollar was a step closer to freedom. Freedom from this house, freedom from being overlooked, freedom to finally chase my dream. You see, my dream wasn't crazy. I wanted to start a small business of my own, something simple but mine. I didn't want to depend on anyone anymore. So I saved. Every dollar I earned, I put into my savings account. While my friends spent money on clothes, games, and parties, I stayed behind. I told myself it would all be worth it. Sometimes I skipped meals at work, just drinking water so I could keep a few extra dollars. Sometimes I walked instead of taking the bus, just so I could save the fare. Slowly, painfully, my account grew. I remember looking at it one night. The balance shone back at me, $28,500. To many people, maybe that's not much. But to me, it was years of blood, sweat, and sleepless nights. It was the foundation of my dream. It was everything. Then came the day everything collapsed. After weeks of endless shifts, I finally took 2 days off. I was exhausted. I walked into the house, hoping for peace, maybe even a little appreciation. Instead, I noticed shopping bags everywhere. Branded clothes, expensive shoes, gadgets, and perfumes, all spread out across the living room. Sierra was sitting there with a smirk, scrolling on her phone, showing off her new things on social media. I frowned. Where did all this come from? She didn't even look up. From your savings, genius. At first, I thought she was joking. My chest tightened as I ran to check my account on my phone. The balance hit me like a punch in the stomach, $346.79. Everything else was gone. My hands shook. My voice cracked as I looked at my mom. What happened to my money? She didn't even look guilty. She just shrugged and said, "Don't worry, Nathan. You'll earn again. You're strong, you're young. Money comes and goes." I laughed lightly, not because it was funny, but because it was unreal. My whole body wanted to scream, but instead I let out a bitter laugh. And that's when Sierra mocked me. She leaned back in her chair, grinning, and said, "He thinks he's smart. Look at him. All that work, all those hours, and now he's empty. I guess I'm the smart one after all." Her words stung, but my laugh didn't stop. I could see confusion in their eyes, as if they were wondering why I wasn't exploding in anger, why I wasn't shouting, why I wasn't breaking things. But deep inside, I already knew something they didn't. The money they spent wasn't just ordinary savings. You see, over the years, I hadn't just put money into my account. I had also invested carefully, quietly, in ways they didn't know. Part of those savings was tied into something Sierra could never understand. A plan that involved people outside this house, people who trusted me, people who relied on me. And now that it was gone, it wasn't just me who would suffer, it would be all of them too. But I didn't say it then. I kept my silence, because sometimes silence is more powerful than shouting. That night, I went into my room and sat on my bed. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about everything I had lost. My chest felt heavy, my hands cold. But then another thought entered my mind. Maybe this was the beginning of something greater. Maybe their betrayal was exactly what I needed to finally break away from them. I pulled out my notebook, the one I had kept hidden for years. Inside it were pages filled with ideas, plans, names, and numbers. It was my secret roadmap. And though my parents and Sierra had destroyed what I had built so far, they couldn't destroy what I had learned. The next day, Sierra paraded her new clothes in front of me again, expecting me to cry or beg. Instead, I smiled at her. That scared her more than anger ever could. She didn't know it yet, but her shopping spree had started a chain of events none of them were ready for. And as I looked at her, I thought to myself, "You've mocked me today, Sierra, but tomorrow you'll understand what you've truly done." Because the savings they spent were never just mine. This was only the beginning. That night after the laughter, after the mocking, after my savings were gone, I couldn't sleep. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, my chest heavy but my mind sharper than ever. My parents thought they had solved everything by brushing it off. Sierra thought she had won, that she had finally proven she was smarter than me. But none of them understood the truth. They had set fire to a bridge that connected not only me but also people who had trusted me with their hopes. You see, that money was never just mine. Half of it was mine, yes, earned through sweat and double shifts. But the other half, it belonged to a small group of friends who believed in me. Months ago, we had pooled our savings together to start a business. I was the one in charge of keeping it safe until we finalized our plan. We wanted to open a small garage where we could fix cars, customize bikes, and slowly grow into something bigger. It wasn't a fantasy. It was something we had researched, budgeted, and carefully prepared. They trusted me because I was the one who had always been serious, the one who stayed out of trouble. And I had promised them their money was safe. Now, because of Sierra's shopping spree and my parents' carelessness, that promise had been broken. The next morning, I woke up with a pit in my stomach. My phone buzzed. It was Jake, one of my closest friends and the most passionate about the garage idea. "Yo, Nathan, when do we meet the landlord for the space? You said this week, right?" I froze. My hands trembled as I typed back, "Yeah, about that. Can we talk later today?" I didn't want to explain everything over text. This was bigger than a message. I walked into the kitchen. Mom was making coffee, Sierra was trying on a jacket she hadn't even removed the tag from, and Dad was reading the newspaper like nothing had happened. My blood boiled, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Mom," I said quietly, "do you realize what you've done?" She glanced at me, annoyed. "Nathan, don't start again. We told you you'll earn again. You're young. Stop acting like it's the end of the world." I clenched my jaw. That wasn't just my money, that was other people's money too. People who trusted me. People who are expecting me to deliver. For the first time, Dad lowered the newspaper and looked at me. His brows furrowed. "What do you mean, other people's money?" I stared at them both. I was holding savings for me and my friends. We had a business planned. You didn't just destroy my future, you destroyed theirs too. Sierra laughed. "Oh, please, don't be so dramatic. A business? With what? Fixing cars? You think that would have gone anywhere? At least I spent it on something useful." I turned to her, my eyes burning. "Useful? You call branded clothes and shoes useful? You spent people's dreams on things you'll throw away in a year." For a second, I thought I saw her smirk fade, but she quickly crossed her arms and rolled her eyes. Mom shook her head. "Nathan, stop blaming everyone. You should have told us if it wasn't all yours. How were we supposed to know?" I laughed bitterly. "Because you never asked. You saw money and you gave it away like it was nothing." I didn't wait for more excuses. I walked out. When I met Jake and the others later that day, my stomach twisted. They were excited, full of energy, but as I explained what happened, their smiles faded. Silence filled the room. Jake's jaw tightened. "You're telling me the money's gone, all of it?" I nodded. "I swear I didn't spend a cent. My parents—" "Your parents," he interrupted, his voice rising. "You let your parents touch our money. Nathan, we trusted you." "I didn't let them," I snapped back. They took it while I was working. I didn't even know until it was too late. The others exchanged looks. I could feel the weight of their disappointment crushing me. Finally, Jake shook his head. Man, I thought you were different, responsible. How are we supposed to start now? My throat felt tight. Give me time, I'll fix this. I don't know how yet, but I will. But the truth was, I had no idea where to begin. That night back at home, Sierra was bragging about a new phone she had bought with my money, or rather our money. She was live streaming to her friends, showing off every little thing. I stood at her door, watching silently. She saw me, smirked, and said into her phone, "Oh, don't mind my brother. He's just upset because he works like a donkey and has nothing to show for it. Meanwhile, look at me." Her friends laughed through the screen. I felt my hands curl into fists, but again, I didn't shout. Shouting wouldn't change anything. Instead, I stepped into her room, closed her laptop, and looked her in the eyes. "You think this is funny now," I said quietly, "but one day you'll regret every single word you just said." She raised an eyebrow. "Big talk, but you're broke now. I'm the one with everything." I leaned closer. "You have things, Sierra, but I have something you'll never have: discipline, patience, and the ability to rise after being crushed. Your shopping spree has an end. My drive doesn't." She rolled her eyes again, but I could tell she was unsettled. The next few weeks were torture. My friends barely spoke to me. Jake avoided me completely. At work, I pushed myself harder than ever, picking up extra shifts, trying to earn faster. But no matter how much I made, it was nothing compared to what was lost. My parents acted like nothing was wrong. Every time I looked at them, anger bubbled inside me, but I swallowed it. I had to think smarter, not louder. And then, one night, while walking home from work, I had an idea. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't guaranteed, but it was something. What if I could rebuild faster, not alone, but by showing my friends that I was serious? What if I could find a way to prove that I was still the same Nathan they trusted? That night, I pulled out my notebook again. I wrote down every skill I had, every contact I knew, every possible way I could turn what little money I had left into something more. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be quick. But I had made a silent promise to myself. Sierra may have mocked me, Mom may have dismissed me, and Dad may have doubted me, but I would not let their betrayal be the final chapter of my story. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, I began working side hustles, fixing bikes in my garage for neighbors, repairing old furniture for cheap, doing whatever I could. It wasn't much, but every little bit counted. Sierra, of course, continued her show-off lifestyle, but little cracks began to show. She started complaining that some of the clothes didn't fit right, or that her friends were no longer impressed because she was buying too much too often. The shine of her spree was fading, even if she didn't admit it. One evening, she walked past me as I was fixing a neighbor's scooter. She sneered, "Still playing with tools? You'll never catch up." I looked at her, smiled, and replied, "Maybe. But the difference is, when your things break, you throw them away. When mine break, I fix them. That's the difference between us." She had no response. But despite my small progress, the weight of my friends' lost trust still haunted me. I knew I needed a bigger move, something that would not just rebuild but shock everyone, including my family. And deep inside, I was waiting for the right moment to show them all what discipline and patience could create out of ashes. Because the savings they spent were not gone forever. They had planted a fire inside me that was only getting stronger. And soon, they would see what it would grow into. When I look back at those days, I realize something important. Sometimes, losing everything gives you a kind of power you never had before. Fear disappears when there's nothing left to lose. That's exactly how I felt. My savings were gone, my friends didn't trust me, and my family had mocked me. But in the middle of that darkness, I found a strange kind of freedom. I could rebuild from scratch, and this time I would do it my way. I started with my garage, my tiny, messy garage at the back of our house. It wasn't much, just a few rusty tools, a broken workbench, and a floor stained with oil. But to me, it was gold. I began offering neighbors cheap repairs for their bikes, scooters, and sometimes even lawnmowers. Word spread slowly. At first, people came with hesitation, not sure if I could actually help them. But when they saw I worked honestly and delivered better results than they expected, they started recommending me to others. Every evening, after my shift at the warehouse, I came home, rolled up my sleeves, and worked in that garage until midnight. Some days I was so exhausted I could barely stand, but every time I handed someone their fixed bike or working appliance, and they pressed a few dollars into my palm, I felt alive. It wasn't about the money yet. It was about proving to myself that I could rise again. But of course, Sierra didn't see it that way. One night, as I was bent over a scooter engine, grease smeared on my hands, Sierra walked in holding a shopping bag. She wrinkled her nose. "Ugh, this place stinks. Are you seriously wasting your time on this junk? No wonder you'll never get ahead." I looked up at her, wiped my forehead, and smiled. "You know what's funny, Sierra? You call this junk, but these small jobs are teaching me more than you'll ever learn shopping for clothes." She rolled her eyes. "You're just jealous. Look at me, Nathan. I have everything I want. Meanwhile, you're down here fixing broken toys." I leaned back, staring at her carefully. "You think you have everything, but one day, when the shine wears off and the bills come knocking, you'll realize what you really have. Nothing." She frowned, but instead of replying, she stormed out. For the first time, I felt like my words had cut deeper than I expected. Weeks passed and my garage began to pick up. I wasn't making thousands, but I was making enough to save steadily. My neighbors started bringing friends from other blocks. People began to trust me with bigger repairs. The sound of tools, the smell of oil, the feeling of solving a problem, it gave me hope again. But one thing still weighed heavy: Jake and my friends. I hadn't told them about the garage. I was afraid they would laugh, or worse, see it as pathetic compared to the garage we had planned together. But deep down, I was building this with them in mind. One day, I wanted to show them that I hadn't given up, that I was still fighting to keep our dream alive. Then something unexpected happened. One Saturday afternoon, as I was fixing a bike chain, Jake showed up. He stood at the entrance of the garage, hands in his pockets, watching me quietly. For a second, my heart sank. I thought he was here to tell me he never wanted to see me again. Instead, he asked softly, "So, this is what you've been doing?" I nodded, my throat dry. "Yeah, I didn't want to tell you until it was something real. But I couldn't just sit and do nothing, Jake. I had to try." He stepped closer, looking around at the tools, the bikes, the small piles of cash I had saved in a jar. Finally, he sighed. "I was angry, Nathan, really angry. But I can't lie, I respect this. You didn't just give up." Relief washed over me. "I'll fix everything, Jake. I don't know how long it'll take, but I will. I'll pay everyone back, and maybe we can still make our dream happen." He looked at me for a long time before nodding. "We'll see, just don't stop." That moment gave me strength I hadn't felt in months. Meanwhile, Sierra's perfect world wasn't as perfect as she pretended. At first, she had basked in the glow of her new things, showing them off to friends and bragging online. But soon, her friends stopped being impressed. They started teasing her behind her back for trying too hard. I overheard one of her calls where someone said, "Sierra, you're just wasting money. Anyone can shop. It doesn't make you special." The comment shattered her. She slammed her phone, screamed into her pillow, and for the first time I saw cracks in her arrogance. But instead of learning, she tried to cover it up with more shopping, more pretending. One evening, Dad came home holding a credit card bill. His face was red with anger. "Sierra, what is this? You've maxed out the card again." Sierra crossed her arms. "Relax, Dad. It's just money. You'll pay it off." He slammed the paper on the table. "No, Sierra, not anymore. This is out of control." For once, I stayed silent. Watching my dad finally face the consequences of spoiling her was strange. A small part of me felt pity, but another part thought, now you see what I've been dealing with. Despite the chaos in the house, I kept working. And slowly, something amazing happened. A man named Mr. Lawson, who owned a small car repair shop nearby, came to me one day. He had heard about my work from a customer. He watched me fix a bike chain and nodded. "You've got skill, kid. Ever thought about working in a proper shop?" My eyes widened. You mean for you? He nodded again. Part-time. I can't pay a lot, but you'll learn real skills here. Skills that can take you far. I accepted immediately. From that day on, I split my time between the warehouse, Mr. Lawson's shop, and my own garage. My days were brutal, my body exhausted, but my mind sharper than ever. I was learning fast, growing stronger, and for the first time since losing my savings, I saw a real future forming again. Sierra, on the other hand, began to feel the walls closing in. Her friends were drifting away. My parents, especially Dad, were finally starting to lose patience. And while she still mocked me sometimes, I could see the jealousy in her eyes when she passed by the garage and saw neighbors thanking me, handing me cash, and praising my work. One night, as I was locking up, she muttered under her breath, I don't get it. You lost everything. Why do people respect you now? I looked at her calmly. Because respect isn't bought, Sierra. It's earned. Something your shopping bags will never teach you. She had no answer. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. I was rebuilding, yes. I was earning again, yes. But the bigger storm, the real consequences of what my parents and Sierra had done, was still waiting to arrive. And when it did, their mocking laughter would vanish forever. Because the money they spent wasn't just mine, it was a bond of trust. And once trust is broken, it leaves scars deeper than money ever could. Working at Mr. Lawson's shop changed everything for me. For the first time, I wasn't just fixing small bikes in a dusty garage. I was learning real trade skills. Engines, transmissions, diagnostics, things I had only dreamed about. Mr. Lawson was strict but fair. He didn't care about my past, my family, or my struggles. He only cared about whether I showed up and worked hard. And that was exactly what I needed. Every day after finishing my warehouse shift, I'd head to his shop, covered in sweat but ready to learn. Sometimes I made mistakes, but Mr. Lawson never laughed at me. Instead, he corrected me, made me redo the job, and told me, the only difference between a fool and a master is repetition. Those words stuck in my head. The more I learned, the more confident I became. And slowly, the money started coming in too. Not riches, not luxury, but enough to feel like I was climbing again. Enough to prove to myself that my dreams weren't dead. Meanwhile, Sierra was slipping. At first, she hid her struggles behind her usual arrogance. She still wore her expensive clothes, still acted like she was on top of the world. But I noticed small things. She wasn't posting as often, her friends weren't visiting anymore, and she avoided answering questions about where she got her money from now. The spree was over, and the shine was gone. One evening, I came home from the shop, tired but satisfied. Dad was sitting at the table with another credit card bill in his hands, his face pale. Mom was scolding Sierra, but she wasn't listening. You have no idea how hard this is, Dad shouted. I've been working extra hours just to cover your mess. Do you think money grows on trees? Sierra shot back. Don't blame me. You let me live like this. You gave me everything I wanted, and now suddenly it's my fault. I stood there quietly, watching the scene. For years, I had wanted them to see the truth, and now it was unfolding in front of me. My parents had created a monster by spoiling her, and now they were paying the price. I walked past them without saying a word, but inside, I felt a strange mix of anger and justice. Maybe this was the start of their lesson. Things began shifting even more when Mr. Lawson gave me a chance I never expected. One Friday afternoon, after we closed the shop, he called me into his office. He leaned back in his chair, his hands folded. Nathan, you've been working harder than most of the guys here. You remind me of myself when I was your age. I blinked, surprised. Thank you, sir. He nodded. Listen, I've been thinking about expanding, opening another branch. I'll need someone I can trust to help run it. Not immediately, but maybe in a year. If you keep this up, that person could be you. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened. A year ago, I had lost everything. Now, here was a man offering me the possibility of becoming more than just a worker, maybe even a partner. Sir, I said finally, I won't let you down. As I walked home that night, my heart was racing. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt not just hope but destiny. At home, Sierra noticed my quiet smile. She frowned. "Why do you look so happy? Did you win the lottery or something?" I chuckled. "No lottery, just progress." She scoffed. "Progress? Please. You'll never be more than a mechanic. And when I figure out my next move, I'll be back on top again." I looked at her calmly. "You don't get it, Sierra. You keep chasing temporary highs. I'm building something permanent. That's the difference between us." Her face hardened, but she didn't reply. Deep inside, I knew my words cut her more than I let on. But life wasn't done testing me. A few days later, Jake showed up again. This time, he wasn't alone. He brought two of our old friends, the same guys who had trusted me with their savings. The air was heavy as they entered my garage. "Look, Nathan," Jake said, "we've seen what you've been doing. Lawson's shop, this garage, the side hustles, we respect it. But the truth is, we're still down a lot of money. We can't just forget that." I nodded, my chest heavy. "I know, and I swear I'm not going to let you guys down. Give me more time. I'll pay every dollar back." One of them crossed his arms. "And how do we know you're not just wasting time? We trusted you once, and look what happened." I swallowed hard. "Because this time I've got proof. Look around you. This garage isn't much, but it's mine. Lawson trusts me. I'm not chasing empty promises. I'm building something real." The silence was thick. Then Jake spoke quietly. "We'll give you time, but don't mistake that for blind trust. You have to earn it back." I nodded. "I will, just watch me." That night, lying in bed, I thought about everything. My parents had failed me. Sierra had mocked me. My friends had almost abandoned me. But here I was, still standing, still building. And I realized something powerful. Sometimes betrayal is the best teacher. It hurts, it breaks you, but it also shows you what truly matters. Sierra's fall became more obvious with each passing week. She tried finding part-time jobs to keep her lifestyle alive, but she quit after a few days each time. "It's too hard," she would complain. "The people are rude. The pay is terrible." I wanted to laugh, but instead I said calmly, "Welcome to my world. That's what real life feels like." She glared at me. "Shut up, I don't need your lectures." But her eyes told me she was scared. For the first time, Sierra was realizing that shopping bags and credit cards couldn't save her from reality. The breaking point came one evening when she asked Dad for more money. "I need at least 1,000, she said almost casually. Dad exploded. 1,000? Sierra, do you hear yourself? We're already drowning because of you. I'm done, no more." She gasped as if the world had ended. "You can't do this to me. You always take care of me." Mom tried to calm her down, but for once, Dad stood firm. "No, it's over. You want money, earn it yourself." Sierra stormed into her room, slamming the door. I watched quietly from the corner, my lips curling into a small smile. For years, I had begged for fairness, for balance. Now, finally, life was teaching her the lessons I had learned long ago. Meanwhile, my own journey was accelerating. Mr. Lawson trusted me with more responsibilities. My garage side work was bringing in more customers. Slowly, I began putting aside money specifically to repay Jake and the others. Every dollar I saved brought me closer to redemption. But it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about proving that I was unbreakable, that even when my own family tore me down, I could rise higher than before. One night, Sierra knocked on my door. That alone shocked me. She never came to me unless she wanted to mock me. She stepped inside, her face pale, her eyes tired. "Nathan, can I borrow some money?" I stared at her, speechless. For years she had laughed at me, insulted me, stolen from me. Now she stood there, asking for help. I leaned back in my chair, studying her carefully. "Why should I?" Her voice cracked. "Because I have nothing left. Everyone turned their back on me. You don't know what that feels like." I laughed softly. "Oh, I do, Sierra. You're describing my life. The only difference is I didn't ask anyone to save me. I saved myself." She looked down, ashamed. For the first time in my life, I saw her not as the golden child, not as the spoiled princess, but as a broken girl who had finally tasted her own medicine. I didn't give her money that night. Instead, I gave her words. If you really want to change, work for it. That's the only way. She left silently. And as I lay down that night, I knew something had shifted forever. The balance in our family was changing. My parents were no longer blind to Sierra's flaws. Sierra herself was no longer untouchable. And me, I was no longer the quiet worker in the shadows. I was becoming something stronger. And this was only the beginning. When Sierra walked out of my room that night, her silence told me more than words ever could. For the first time in years, she wasn't the one holding power. She wasn't mocking me, she wasn't laughing at me, she was asking. And that small shift changed everything in our house. The next morning at breakfast, she sat quietly, poking at her food, not bragging about her clothes or phone like usual. Mom noticed and asked, "What's wrong, honey?" Sierra muttered, "Nothing." But I knew. Her world was crumbling and she didn't know how to fix it. Dad, on the other hand, seemed more worn down than ever. The bills were stacking, his job was pushing him to the edge, and I could see the guilt in his eyes every time he looked at me. He didn't say it out loud, but I knew he regretted what they had done with my savings. Regret, however, didn't bring the money back. So I stayed focused. Work at the warehouse, training at Lawson's shop, and fixing whatever came into my garage. My days blurred together, but my purpose kept me alive. Every dollar I saved went into 2 jars, one marked repay and the other marked future. One for my friends, one for me. Watching them slowly fill gave me strength. One evening, while I was fixing a customer's motorbike, Sierra came into the garage again. This time, she wasn't sneering. She leaned against the doorway, her arms folded, looking tired. "I applied for a job today," she said suddenly. I looked up surprised. "Really, where?" "At the mall, clothing store. It's not much, but it's something." I couldn't help but smirk. "A clothing store, huh? Guess it fits." She frowned. "Don't start." I set my wrench down and studied her. For once, her face didn't have that fake confidence. She looked real human. "I'm not mocking you, Sierra. If you actually stick with it, that's a good start. But if you're expecting it to be easy, you'll quit in a week." Her eyes narrowed. "You think I can't do it?" I shrugged. "Prove me wrong." She didn't reply, but I could see a spark in her eyes, the same spark I had always had when someone doubted me. Days later, I found out she actually got the job. She came home wearing a cheap uniform, looking exhausted, her hair messy. She dropped her bag on the floor and groaned. "God, people are so rude. Do you know how hard it is to fold clothes for strangers who don't even say thank you?" I chuckled. "Yeah, I know. Try working double shifts in a warehouse where nobody even knows your name." She glared, but then her face softened. "I guess I never realized how hard working really is." For the first time, she didn't sound arrogant. She sounded almost humble. That night, as she passed by my garage, she paused. "Nathan." "Yeah. I'm sorry for before." The words were quiet, almost lost in the hum of the night, but I heard them, and for a second the weight of years lifted from my chest. I didn't say it's okay because it wasn't, not yet. Instead, I just nodded. "Don't say sorry, just change." She nodded back and walked away. Meanwhile, my own life was gaining momentum. At Lawson's shop, I was handling bigger repairs. Sometimes he even let me manage customers myself. One Saturday, he patted my shoulder and said, "You've got potential, Nathan. Don't waste it." Those words echoed in my head for days. At the same time, my garage became busier. People trusted me now. Some even preferred me over larger shops because I charged fairly and worked honestly. One man even told me, "You remind me of the old days when people actually cared about their work." That compliment stayed with me more than the money he gave me. But the biggest moment came when Jake showed up again, this time smiling. He watched me repair a car battery, then said, "You weren't kidding, huh? You really are rebuilding." I grinned. "Told you, I'll pay everything back, Jake, just give me more time." He clapped me on the back. "I believe you now, and when you're ready, maybe we can talk about the garage dream again." My chest swelled. For the first time since losing everything, I felt like redemption wasn't just a dream, it was coming. But while my life rose, Sierra's balance kept tipping. At her job, she lasted longer than I expected, but reality hit hard. She complained about rude customers, strict managers, and long hours. She came home exhausted, with blisters on her feet and less money than she thought she'd make. One night, she collapsed on the couch, tears in her eyes. "How did you do this for years, Nathan? How did you keep going?" I sat beside her, quiet for a moment. Then I said, "Because I didn't have a choice, and because I wanted something bigger than comfort. You only did this for a paycheck. I did it for freedom." She wiped her tears, whispering, "I wish I had your strength." I looked at her carefully. "You can, but you have to earn it. No shortcuts, no excuses." That was the night I realized Sierra was changing. Slowly, painfully, but changing. Meanwhile, the tension between my parents grew. Mom still tried to defend Sierra sometimes, but even she couldn't ignore the damage anymore. Dad was bitter, tired, and angry. He worked extra shifts, but it was never enough. Every time a bill came, their voices rose. One night, I heard them arguing. Dad shouted, "This is what happens when you spoil her. You gave her everything, and now look." Mom snapped back, "Don't blame me alone. You never said no either. You thought she was perfect." Their words cut through the walls. I sat in my room, staring at my jars of savings, thinking about how different my path had been. I had nothing handed to me. And now, ironically, I was the one holding us together. Then came a turning point. One evening, a man walked into my garage with a car that had broken down. I fixed it quickly, and he was impressed. He handed me his card and said, "I own a delivery company. We need someone reliable to maintain our vehicles. Interested?" I nearly dropped the wrench. "Yes, sir, absolutely." That one connection doubled my work overnight. Suddenly, I wasn't just fixing bikes and scooters. I was maintaining vans and cars for a small business. The income grew. The respect grew. And with every paycheck, my repay jar grew faster than I ever thought possible. When I told Jake, he whistled. "Man, you're unstoppable. At this rate, you'll have us all paid back soon." I smiled, my heart full. "And when that happens, I want us to try again. The garage dream, bigger this time." Jake grinned, "Count me in." At home, things shifted further. Sierra's paycheck was small, but she started helping with little things, buying groceries, paying part of the electricity bill. Mom was shocked, Dad was cautious, but I could see Sierra trying. One evening, as we sat at dinner, Sierra looked at me and said, "Nathan, I didn't understand before. About your savings, about your hard work. But now I do, and I'll never forgive myself for what I did." The table went silent. Mom whispered, "Sierra." But I cut her off gently. "Don't look back, just keep moving forward. That's all that matters." For once, Sierra didn't argue. She just nodded. But even as the family began to heal, I knew one thing: the story wasn't over. My friends still needed their money. My dream was still incomplete, and the scars of betrayal still lived inside me. But now, instead of weakness, those scars gave me strength. Because the savings they spent had built something no money ever could, my fire. And that fire was only getting stronger. When I think back to those nights I spent staring at the empty spot where my savings used to be, I remember the burning anger that lived inside me. That anger could have destroyed me, but instead, it turned into fuel. And now, months later, I was finally standing in the place I had dreamed of, stronger, steadier, and closer to repaying everything that was lost. The small contract with the delivery company grew faster than I expected. One van turned into 3. 3 turned into 10. They trusted me because I never cut corners, never delayed, and never lied about repairs. Word spread. Soon, other businesses in town called me for work. My garage, once just a corner with tools, now looked alive. Vehicles lined up outside, neighbors stopped to ask for quick fixes, and I even had to turn some jobs away. The jars on my shelf grew heavier every week. One night, I poured the money from both jars onto my bed and started counting. When I finished, my chest tightened with pride, because for the first time, the repay jar was full enough to cover Jake's share. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking, and called him. "Jake, you free tomorrow?" "Yeah, why?" I owe you something. Meet me at the diner. The next day, I slid an envelope across the diner table. Jake frowned, opening it. When he saw the bills inside, his eyes widened. Nathan, this is. Your money, I interrupted. Every dollar you trusted me with, paid back. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he grinned, shaking his head. Man, I don't even care about the money anymore. But this proves you're the guy I always believed in. My throat tightened. I had to, Jake. I couldn't live with myself otherwise. He leaned back, smirking. So what's next? You going to pay the others too? I nodded, one by one, until they all believe again. Paying Jake back was like removing a stone from my chest, but it also made me realize how much further I had to go. My friends had stood by me when nobody else did, and I couldn't let them down. So I worked harder. I fixed cars till midnight, trained at Lawson's shop, and took every extra shift I could. My hands ached, my back burned, but the fire in my heart never faded. Meanwhile, Sierra's transformation was still ongoing. She kept her job at the clothing store, though she complained less now. Sometimes, I caught her staring at me when I came home covered in grease, like she was trying to understand something she never had before. One night, she knocked on my door. I looked up from the engine I was fixing. Yeah. She stepped inside, holding a small envelope. Here. I raised an eyebrow. What's this? My first paycheck. Well, part of it. I used the rest for bills, but I want you to have this. I froze. Sierra, why? Because I owe you, she whispered. Her voice cracked. I destroyed what you worked for. I can never repay all of it, but at least let me try. For the first time in years, I didn't see Sierra the spoiled princess. I saw Sierra the sister. Broken, trying, human. I took the envelope slowly, my throat tight. Thank you, but keep working, don't stop now. She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. But life wasn't done testing us. One Friday evening, Dad came home looking paler than ever. He slumped into his chair, holding a letter. Mom asked what was wrong, but his silence said it all. I grabbed the letter from his hand and read it, final notice for unpaid bills. I slammed it on the table. You let it get this far. Dad buried his face in his hands. I couldn't keep up, Nathan. No matter how much I worked, it wasn't enough. For years, I had wanted to scream at him for being blind, for letting Mom and Sierra spend everything, for standing by when my savings vanished. But in that moment, I saw something I hadn't seen before: defeat. He wasn't proud anymore. He wasn't stubborn. He was broken. I exhaled slowly. Don't worry, I'll handle it. Mom gasped. Nathan, you already do so much. I said I'll handle it, I repeated firmly. And I did. I took money from the repay jar, balanced what was left with new earnings, and cleared the bill. It delayed me paying the next friend, but it kept the roof over our heads. That night, Dad came to me quietly. His voice shook as he said, I failed you, son. You were always stronger than me. I didn't know how to respond, so I just said, then let me carry it now, but don't let it happen again. He nodded, his eyes wet. Weeks passed, and little by little, balance returned to our house. Sierra kept working, Dad avoided fights, and Mom stopped spoiling her. The tension didn't vanish overnight, but it softened. For the first time, dinners didn't feel like a battlefield. But deep inside, I knew the biggest truth was still unspoken, the truth about the savings they had stolen. We all acted like time had erased it, but time hadn't. The wound was still there, and until we faced it, none of us could truly move on. The chance came unexpectedly. One Sunday, we were sitting in the living room when Sierra suddenly whispered, Mom, Daddy, we need to talk about what we did to Nathan. The room went cold. Mom shifted uncomfortably. Dad stared at the floor. I sat frozen, my heart pounding. Sierra continued, You both gave away his savings for me, and I let you. I laughed at him when he tried to speak up, but do you know what that money really was? Mom snapped, Sierra, don't. No, she interrupted, her voice trembling but strong. You need to hear this. That money wasn't just Nathan's dream. It was also his friends' money, people who trusted him, And we didn't just ruin his future, we ruined his trust with them. We destroyed everything he built. Her words hung heavy in the room. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Dad swallowed hard, his voice breaking. Nathan, is that true? I nodded slowly. Yes, that savings was never mine alone. It belonged to all of us who dreamed of building something together. And when you gave it away, I lost more than money. I lost years. I lost respect. I lost myself. Silence. Nobody spoke. The weight of the truth pressed down on us like chains. Finally, Mom sobbed. Nathan, we were wrong. We thought you'd always bounce back. We didn't realize what we were taking from you. Dad whispered, I was a fool. I should have protected you. And Sierra, she cried openly, I hate myself for what I did. For a long moment, I didn't know what to say. My anger wanted to scream, but my heart was tired of carrying hate. So I simply said, don't ever do it again. If you want forgiveness, prove it, not with words, with actions. They all nodded, their faces pale but determined. And for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, they understood. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about everything. The betrayal, the laughter, the struggle, and now this fragile moment of truth. I realized something. The savings they had spent weren't the real treasure. The real treasure was what I had built after losing it. My strength, my fire, my future. But the story wasn't done yet. Because one last chapter remained. The chapter where I would finally rise above it all, repay every friend, and turn the dream we once lost into something bigger than all of us. The morning after that heavy conversation, I woke up feeling different. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was carrying the entire world alone. The scars were still there, yes, but the weight had shifted. My family had finally seen the truth, and Sierra had spoken the words I never thought I'd hear. Still, I knew words weren't enough. Promises fade, tears dry. The only thing that matters in life is action. And I had a mission left unfinished, the mission of repaying every single friend who trusted me with their money. I stood in front of my jars that morning, sunlight hitting the glass. The repay jar was halfway full again, and my schedule was packed with work. The path ahead was long, but I wasn't afraid anymore. The next few months turned into a blur of sweat and determination. Every day I repaired cars in my garage until midnight, and every morning I trained with Lawson to sharpen my skills. The man pushed me hard, sometimes harder than I thought I could handle. But he always said, Nathan, every wrench you turn, every hour you push, it's another brick in your foundation. Don't stop. With each paycheck, I split the money. Some for bills, some for the garage, and the biggest chunk for the repay jar. One by one, I met my friends. First was Caleb, who had always been the loud joker of the group. When I placed the envelope in his hands, he stared at me in shock. You actually did it, he whispered. I told you I would, I said quietly. He hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. Man, I never doubted your heart, just your sanity. We laughed, and for the first time in years, the tension between us melted. Then came Michael, who had been the most skeptical. I still remember his eyes narrowing when I handed him his money. You're serious? He asked. Dead serious. He counted it slowly, then looked at me, guilt flashing across his face. I talked bad about you, Nathan. I told people you'd never make it back. I smiled faintly. Then let this be proof you were wrong. He shook his head. No, let this be proof that I was blind. Friend by friend, debt by debt, I repaid them all. Each time I felt lighter, as if chains were being cut from around my chest. At home, things were different too. Sierra kept working at the clothing store. She didn't come home with bags of expensive clothes anymore. Instead, she came home with tired eyes and calloused hands, the kind of marks I recognized. Sometimes she slipped small bills into my repay jar, quietly, without saying a word. I never called her out for it, but I noticed. And every time it made me proud. Mom changed too. She stopped brushing things off with empty words. She started cooking meals when she knew I'd be working late, leaving them covered on the counter. Sometimes, she even came into the garage just to watch me work, her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in years: respect. Dad worked overtime when he could. He wasn't as strong as before, but he tried. And when bills came in, he made sure they were handled on time. He never wanted me to carry it all alone again. It wasn't perfect. We still argued sometimes. Old habits are hard to kill, but the difference was clear. This time they were fighting with me, not against me. And then came the day. After months of blood, sweat, and broken nights of sleep, I placed the final envelope into Jake's hands, the last of the last. "Now," I said, breathing heavily, "we're even." He looked at the envelope, then at me, and shook his head. "No, Nathan, we're not even. You're far ahead, because you kept your word even when everyone else gave up." I smiled. For the first time, the storm inside me truly felt quiet. That night, I emptied the repay jar. For the first time in years, it was no longer needed. Every dollar had found its way back home, and that meant one thing: now it was time to chase the dream again. I called my friends together at the garage. The place wasn't fancy, just a wide shed with tools hanging on the walls and the smell of oil in the air. But to me, it was sacred ground. "Look," I said, standing before them. "We lost years because of what happened. I know I can't give that back, but what I can give is a second chance. This garage, it's not just mine anymore. It's ours. If you're willing to work, we can finally build what we dreamed of." For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Jake stepped forward, grinning. "Count me in." Caleb clapped his hands. "Man, I've been waiting for this." Michael sighed but smiled. "Guess I'm in too, but if this fails again, I'm blaming you." We laughed, and just like that, the dream was reborn. The following weeks were the hardest yet most fulfilling of my life. We worked together, building the garage into something real. We painted the walls, repaired the roof, and spread the word in the neighborhood. Customers started to roll in, curious at first, then impressed. One customer turned into 10. 10 turned into 50. Soon, we weren't just fixing cars, we were building a reputation. Sierra even brought her friends to get their cars repaired, proudly saying, "This is my brother's garage." The same sister who once mocked me now spoke with pride. Mom started bringing snacks for the customers waiting in the lobby. Dad handled small paperwork jobs, filing receipts and managing calls. It wasn't perfect, but it was family. For the first time, we weren't divided. We were united. One late evening, after we closed the shop, I sat on the hood of a car, staring at the stars through the open garage door. Sierra walked up and sat beside me. "You did it," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, we did it, because this time you didn't just take, you gave." She smiled softly, tears in her eyes. "I'll never forget what you lost because of me." I looked at her and said, "Then don't forget what we gained because we learned." Months later, the garage had grown beyond what I imagined. We had regular clients, new tools, and even talks of expanding. But more important than any of that was the peace at home. We weren't the same broken family anymore. We were stronger. Scarred, yes, but scars only mean you healed. And now, as I tell you this story, I realize something powerful. The savings they spent were never just money. They were lessons. Lessons that shaped me, tested me, broke me, and built me again. If I had never lost those savings, maybe I wouldn't have found the strength to rise higher. Maybe Sierra would never have changed. Maybe my family would never have faced their truth. Sometimes life takes away what you think you need, only to give you what you actually need. So to anyone listening to me right now, let me leave you with this. Don't let betrayal break you. Let it build you. Don't let loss define you. Let it refine you. I'm Nathan Carter. This was my story.